So I want to come back to what I was addressing with Ms McNally with regards to the NDLS and the ridiculousness of the fact that we have a medical at 75 and what you have put to me as the excuses you're being given and accepting of bus Éireann. So let me read from the department's own website. Minister of State Hildegard Naughton says people who are 70 years of age and over can now apply for renew their driving licence without the need to submit a medical report until they reach the age of 75. Supporting this change, Professor Desmond O'Neill, the National Office for Traffic Medicine, commented, "This change is welcome in terms of recognising that older drivers are an exceptionally responsible group of drivers. In addition, the change is supported by international research indicating that routine medical screening of older drivers is not only ineffective, but may actually unintentionally increase injury and death among older drivers as pedestrians." Now, that's a contrary international research study, but coming from the same department. So I would ask you, Ms McNally, to exercise your own practical knowledge. Many of these children are being collected, particularly at primary school level, by their 80-year-old grandparents for the lack of a driver. So if I'm going to be dead frank, if I was the Minister for for Education and you came into me with, as the Sec Gen, with that waffle, you wouldn't be sitting where you are today, and that's as frank as I am.
Yeah, but you'd ask you to treat the witness.
I'm just being frank.
Respect.
I am saying
okay.
If I was in the position of the Minister, I wouldn't listen to it for 2 minutes. There's no question, Ms McNally. I'm stating the fact with regards to contrary evidence.
Can I actually respond? Because
I
know
time.
Professor Des O'Neill.
No, I haven't time. What I expect
there is an
you
answer
to do
that, Deputy, I
is
have to tell you.
Like the Minister is now saying in the review, on top of the review, that she's going to get Minister Eamon Ryan to look at the over 70s rule.
Deputy, just I'll let you on for a minute. Just a
well, then
can I please respond?
Just to be fair to the witness, just if you want to respond to that.
Yeah, can I? I worked with Professor Des O'Neill before, who's a huge advocate for older people, and much of his research and much of what he comments about is older people driving their individual cars, where they get to choose whether they go out in foggy conditions or rainy conditions or darkness or light, etc. As I said before, Deputy, we're talking about driving buses with potentially 52 children and young people moving around.
The extension of the medical is for professional drivers. All drivers, not just people over 70 who are talking
Deputy,
about.
I'm talking about Bus Éireann's position. And it is Bus
Éireann's
Éireann's
position in any other realm would be ageist and discriminatory. And I am so surprised that you're continuing with this line, even though there is contrary international evidence to what the excuse is that they're giving you. And that's why we don't have proactive people. They don't seem to be able to exercise their own brains. They accept what they're being told, contrary to the evidence of what they're doing. One hand in the Department of Transport doesn't know what the other hand is doing. So that wasn't an answer. That was trying to justify your own inaction, I'm afraid. And that's why we are without school buses, because we don't have drivers. And that's why it's so ridiculous to tell me that the same driver can't take the children to school, but he can collect them from the school and bring them to Dublin on a school tour. Please, don't let yourself down. Use your brains. This is ridiculous stuff. And it's the only people suffering are parents under huge pressure to work, to meet the cost of living, most of it inflicted by this government. And we have other TDs coming in here of government realm.
Policy, we're not going to go into policy.
Well, we weren't going to go into policy until it was raised.
We can raise that in the chamber.
Well, grand. Well, the point here is the people suffering are the children, because their parents are having to leave them waiting whilst they finish work, sometimes at 5 o'clock, to collect them from school. And it's causing huge antisocial behavioural problems and worry for parents.
Look, Deputy, I would say there are 7,400 vehicles on the road,
Ms.
and
McNally,
services are being provided to 163,000
Do we have a shortage of buses?
We have in
Do we have a shortage of drivers?
We have in
Could
some
you
instances.
accept and listen to what I'm saying?
I am listening.
Do you accept what I'm saying?
Deputy, there is other evidence, Deputy. There is evidence that the Bus Éireann base their position on the Road Safety Authority
So now
is
you're
also
back,
familiar
you're
with
back
that
to defending
evidence.
Bus Éireann, the same department where they have extended the medical requirement. The only, your whole premise is that Bus Éireann have said medical requirement is what makes an over 70 unsafe. Medical evidence.
Deputy, I talked about the context of 52
The
children and young people
RSA are
and
the people who
conditions.
recommended we remove the medical, the Road Safety Authority. Don't be telling me to read research if you're not reading it yourself. This is contrary. In this department, we seem to have two reports that say conflicting things about the same thing. And you're trying to justify it now for your own inaction. Because we have 46 children in Kilmore and almost 50 between Gorey and Ferns who have no mode of transport to school for next year. I'd ask you to just try to resolve that. That's your job.
I think some of the children you're talking to in Kilmore, I don't think had applied for the school transport scheme, but I could be
Because they
wrong.
weren't eligible in the first place. This
as
is
you
about
know-
where you put a bus on in Kilkenny for ineligible children at the drop of a hat because a colleague of the minister's asked for it. I haven't got the answer from Miss Conduit today, even though she knew I had made inquiries. She still doesn't know if there's 3 buses on or 2.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just to
Conduit.
clarify that, Deputy, 3 buses were approved for Callan. They were approved in October. It did take until March to procure one of the buses and a contractor stepped back. Now, for operational reasons, there are 2 buses, you're quite correct, because the demand has reduced for that route.
So the demand has reduced. So Miss Conduit, what you're telling me now is we're able to accommodate the extra students that required 3 buses on 2. And how or why would the demand have reduced? What would give rise to that?
I'm sorry, I can't tell you that. I just know that the demand has reduced.
So we didn't need, how long was the 3rd bus put on for?
I think it was put on and then a contractor withdrew their services, so there had to be another process to get the bus. So I can't tell you that exactly.
Well, I have contrary information that it was a Bus Éireann bus and after a week, all of the children were accommodated on the empty seats of the 2 current buses that were running. Would that sound right?
And that would be the normal case for concessionary children, where there's additional capacity on a bus, they would be accommodated.
Yeah. Well, every time I contact...
There is nothing particularly unique about that particular
Oh,
route.
what's unique about it is that the same arose in Kilmore last October, but no bus was put on.
Those children, as far as I understand, and I know we've requested further information on this, had never applied for school transport.
The eligibility criteria is that the children where? Sorry, in Kilmore.
I'm sorry, I know you referenced Kilmore. We did go back seeking further information on whether it was Kilmore Village or Kilmore Quay. Those children, as far as I know, most of them never applied for school transport.
Oh, they did.
They're,
What happened was they had a private operator who withdrew his services.
I'm aware of that.
And they
that's
weren't.
very unfortunate for those
Oh,
families.
of
I
course,
acknowledge
it's very
that.
unfortunate, but these are all working parents. I'm not here to argue how unfortunate it is. I'm wondering why it's one rule for one. It's not the same rule for everybody, unless it appears you're a TD colleague of the same party
Sorry,
of the minister.
Can I just clarify?
That's a political road that'll have to be had.
Well, that seems to be what's happening.
Just clarify briefly, and then Deputy McCall.
No, I'm not.
I just
sorry
want to
now, Chair.
clarify.
Hold on.
No, I have one more
There's 5
question because
deputies.
you
Well,
allowed Ms
brief,
McNally
very,
in with
very
no
brief.
information.
Very, very brief.
It's not unique. There's a large number of concessionary children that are accommodated on school transport every year. There's eligible children, there's children under TANs, there's children who will be TANs, but there may be a school
I'm concerned, Ms.
And there's a
Conduit,
large number of
with the
concessionary
large
children
number of
that are
children
accommodated.
who are not being catered for, whose parents are working and contributing to the tax take of this country. There seems to be no understanding. I have one question that...
Very brief question.
I want to know on the accounts what the prepayments were. There was an advance in 21 and 22 to Bus Éireann. In 21 it was 8,990,000. In 22 it was 13,244,000. Why would we be making advance payments to Bus Éireann?
I'd ask Aoife to come in on that, but I can assure you that we give Bus Éireann the amount of money that is deemed appropriate. Sometimes there is a prepayment. It is an agreement that we prepay them, but we look at the funding on a monthly basis. There's a very strong forensic process, I would say, and they only get the cost that they've incurred, and you know that they operate on a cost recovery basis only. So on the specifics, I don't know, Aoife, do you have that? School transport, yeah.
So you prepay. Do Bus Éireann prepay the independent contractors that they hire?
I can check. Aoife, do you have that detail about the prepayment?
As far as I'm aware, 6.1 million of that was for the waiver of fees that was introduced for that year, so that would have been prepaid up front. As the Secretary-General has said, at the end of the year, any surplus is returned to the department and to the Exchequer. So the prepayment may be, you know, in terms of providing for the fee waiver or for other matters, but it is not additional funding above and
So
beyond.
what are the accrued expenses then, which doubled in the year 21 to 22 to 8.5 million, just short of it? What are accrued expenses?
The 6.1 million relates to the fee waiver.
Yeah, but that's included in the other expense. What are the accrued expenses at a rate of 8.5 million?
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
It says
just-
Bus Éireann accrued expenses.
Yeah.
Which are separate
If you don't
to
have
the-
the figure to hand by the end of the meeting, will be satisfactory. Have you got it? You have it, Mr. Whelan. Okay, you can give it just briefly. Or
So just going back to the prepayment first, and then we go to the accrued. So the prepayment is made up of two elements. So the 7 million of that is due to balance owing to the department following the end of 2022. So we pay, there's a payment, schedule of payments we pay to Bus Éireann agreed at the year. So those payments are paid out. At the end of the year, Bus Éireann have their accounts audited and we find out what the balancing payment is. That can vary from year to year. So we have the final accounts. So that we know that's a prepayment after the year end and we get that money back in the following year. The reason that the prepayment increased at that to 13 million in 2022 compared to 2021 was because of there was a cost of living measure. There was a few contribution made to the contractors for the increased cost, and that was 6 million, and that was approved by government to keep that advance payment out to Bus Éireann to pay to the contractors.
Thank you. Deputy McAuliffe.